BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all of your sports betting action. With baseball season in full swing, and BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are still being played. We keep the dog days of summer rolling with the largest selection of odds on everything, with updated odds on Major League Baseball, UFC, and boxing, to tennis, and NFL futures. BetOnline remains the best online source for all of your sports wagering information. In between games, just head on over to the BetOnline Casino with all of the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bleav in Bengals podcast. And today we are joined by a very special guest. Sports business attorney Jesse Taylor is joining us on the show. We've got a really great conversation in store for you. But first, let's say hello to Jesse. Jesse, how you doing today, my friend?
Solomon, I'm doing wonderful. Thanks so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Well, look, it's great to have you on. There's been some wonderful reporting done by Pablo Torres and Mike Florio, and it's regarding the NFL Players Association, and they filed a grievance against the NFL and its ownership group, alleging that they colluded to eliminate fully guaranteed contracts. What more can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so this has kind of been something that is a little older than people probably realize, as it took a while for it to come out. I mean, this dates back all the way to 2022. It's not something that just happened. The grievance was filed shortly after the Deshaun Watson contract. A week after that, the NFL had an owners meeting where someone from what's called the NFL, their management council, actually went to the owners meeting basically on behalf of Roger Goodell and the NFL and said, hey, pump the brakes. It's not a good idea to fully guarantee these contracts. Word got out, the NFLPA heard about this, and rightfully so, filed a grievance. Why? Because as we see, here we go, almost 3 years later, and there still hasn't been a fully guaranteed contract since Deshaun Watson. And you really have to ask yourself, is this coincidence or is this collusion? And the NFLPA, in their grievance, took the NFL to arbitration, which is the basically the forum selection, the courtroom, so to speak, that the NFL and the NFLPA agree to use. Arbitration is common. It's common in all professional sports. You see it in baseball, you see it in basketball, you see it in the WNBA, and you see it in the NFL. And what they did is, we're talking about 2 years of discovery. Discovery being all the evidence that was that the NFL had, and they had to give over to the NFLPA, and then they comb through it. They have to turn over witness lists, and these witness lists had basically, I'm pretty sure it's a quarter of the owners, of the NFL owners were listed as witnesses, called to testify at this hearing. Players, we're talking about franchise quarterbacks that were called to testify at this hearing. Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson, and I believe Kyler Murray. And ultimately, what it came down to, like I just said earlier, is this coincidence or is this collusion? And let me tell you something. There was a lot of evidence that was testified to and shown at this hearing. This was a 10-day hearing that took place late last July and into August. 10-day hearing is a long time for an arbitration hearing to go. And again, like I said, it's all based on testimony and the evidence that was shown.
And ultimately, the arbitrator ruled in favor of the NFL owners because they said the preponderance of evidence did not rise to the level of collusion. However, there was a lot of evidence. Can you cite what some of those examples were that they felt like came very close to attempting collusion, even though they did not come to that final conclusion?
Yeah, Solomon, and you mentioned the preponderance of the evidence, right? I did a little bit more digging, and I asked some other sports law attorneys about this, because us attorneys, by a preponderance of the evidence is something we see every single day. It's the burden of proof.
Yes.
It's the standard that the NFLPA has to demonstrate and show. Well, it wasn't so much that. It was actually what they called a clear preponderance of the evidence, which is different than by a preponderance of the evidence.
Okay.
And going deeper into that is preponderance of the evidence is usually a more likely than not. You got your scales of justice. 51% is about all you have to do. You have to make that slide down just ever so slightly to win your case. Clear preponderance of the evidence is not by a preponderance of the evidence.
It's a higher threshold.
It's a higher threshold. Absolutely. We hear as attorneys, we hear clear and convincing evidence, which again is higher. I mean, it's something that when I talk to other attorneys, I'm like, have you ever heard of this standard? And they go, no, I've never heard of it. So it's just something that they put in. They agreed to put in. I missed it the first couple of times that I read it because I see preponderance of the evidence. I immediately go to that more likely than not. But no, this was the NFLPA was held to a higher burden than normal. So, and that's what this arbitrator had to use. That's what was agreed. So when he's looking at all this evidence, and the evidence was quite impressive and concerning.
What were some of those examples?
Yeah, the biggest one was the direct quote from the arbitrator about finding that there was evidence that this NFL Management Council went into the owners' meeting and encouraged. The word he used was encouraged owners to stay away from these fully guaranteed contracts. That's alarming. That on the face says, hey, oh my, what are they doing? What's the NFL doing? What's Roger Goodell giving this guy permission to go and tell them? And this was a PowerPoint presentation that he gave on the pitfalls and why to avoid fully guaranteed contracts, why it's bad for the NFL when you see it in so many other professional sports leagues. It blows my mind that it even got addressed. The issue being is even though there was encouragement, was there active participation? That's right. You can encourage someone, but if they don't actively participate, did they collude? And that was instrumental in what the arbitrator looked at, because he does see this encouragement. And then the next bit of evidence that comes in, you've got Lamar Jackson testifying that, hey, when I went to the Ravens about a contract, I said I want a fully guaranteed contract. Then you see that the evidence is he was offered not one, but two fully guaranteed contracts from the Ravens that he ultimately turned down. Reason being is because they were 3 years fully guaranteed. Lamar wanted 5 or more fully guaranteed. He didn't want just 3 years and then have to come back to the negotiating table and do it again. He wanted that job security. Yeah. The other issue that we saw that they looked at was Russell Wilson. When Russell Wilson was traded from Seattle to Denver, he had a no trade clause. And it was what was conveyed to him was, if you waive the no trade clause, we're looking at meeting your demand of a fully guaranteed contract. Well, that trade took place. If you're following NFL ownership and know what happened the summer of 2022, you know that the Denver Broncos were purchased for an instrumental amount of money by I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but
from the Walton family,
Walmart, right?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And when they came in, again, this was after the encouragement. This was after everything. Russell Wilson did not get a fully guaranteed contract. So again, that does show maybe possibly some evidence of collusion, or what the NFL is saying is coincidence, right? New ownership comes in, and I looked at it this way. I think the arbitrator, and I don't think he mentioned it in his ruling, that was when the Walton family came in, they weren't privy to that owners meeting, right? Yes. So there's no way of knowing if they relied on what was said and done at that meeting.
We don't know that they got the memo, right?
Correct. And there was no evidence of that in court, whether it's arbitration or court. Speculation can't come in. And they're not going to rely on that in making their decisions. So I think they ultimately set aside Russell Wilson's ordeal and then came and looked at more evidence. More evidence. The next piece that they looked at was Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray approached Michael Bidwell and Arizona Cardinals ownership and front office and said, I want a fully guaranteed contract. If Deshaun Watson got a fully guaranteed contract, I want this fully guaranteed contract. Well, as we know, there were a lot of caveats and carve-outs in Kyler Murray's contract, and they did use this a little bit to say, hey, I don't think they ever were going to offer him a fully guaranteed contract. If you remember, that contract had the clause or the carve-out about playing, was it the Call of Duty video game, and making sure that he's monitoring how many hours that he's using the playbook. Correct. Which they ultimately tossed that aside. And that could be viewed possibly as, was that a throwaway? Was that part of the negotiation? Even though I think that was after. I think it was thrown out after the contract was signed.
That's right.
So you have all of this. You have all this evidence. You've got other owners that testified saying that they did not rely on this. They were privy to it. But it wasn't something that they actively participated in. They just didn't want. They already knew that this was inherently not good business for NFL owners to get into. So ultimately, more evidence tends to come out that I know a lot of media is running with and saying this is evidence. This is pure evidence of collusion. And it was a text conversation between Dean Spanos and Michael Bidwell after Kyler Murray signed the contract. And what that said was something along the lines of, hey, we're glad. So this is Spanos to Bidwell. We're glad you didn't fully guarantee that contract to Kyler, because since you didn't, it's going to make it a whole lot easier to do a contract extension with Justin Herbert, right? On the face, you look at this and you're like, come on, it's in the back of their mind. It
looks like a smoking gun. It looks like a smoking gun.
It looks like it, but in the eyes of the law, you have to analyze it and say, this came after. It came after Kyler's contract. Now, could it be portrayed as colluding on Justin Herbert's contract? And the evidence doesn't point to that the arbitrator found, because ultimately there was no testimony. There was nothing that Herbert was going in and demanding a fully guaranteed contract. There was no evidence that Spanos was talking to other teams saying, I'm not going to fully guarantee this. Please, you guys don't fully guarantee this as well. None of that came out. That would have been nice to have, but it wasn't evidence. It's not what was presented at arbitration. So you have all of this. You have it all, and you stack it up, and you try to make your case, right?
The NFLPA thought that they had a pretty good case. The issue is when you stack it all up and you get into the fact that Lamar Jackson was given a fully guaranteed, not just one offer, but two offers. What that did is that pulled the rug out, and the rest of the evidence kind of tumbled down, and they didn't meet their burden of proof. Now, that doesn't mean that some of these teams did not rely on the encouragement of this management council. It just means that the NFLPA didn't meet their burden of proof of a clear preponderance of the evidence. And realistically, that's the way that the law works. You have to have all the evidence. You have to be able to one, build your case up, and then not have anything, poke holes or bring it down. And that's what the NFL was able to do. Now, there are some other things that the NFLPA added to their case about vesting guarantees and looking at other contracts that I think kind of convoluted everything. But the main point, the main picture of all of this is, the NFL encouraged these teams not to fully guarantee veteran contracts. And it's had a direct effect on whether or not these owners are willing to do it or not. The evidence, I think, is, the fact that there hasn't been a single NFL veteran contract fully guaranteed since Deshaun Watson. They've come close. I Bleav Daniel Hunter had 98% of his contract fully guaranteed. But that's not 100%. And fully guaranteed means exactly that, 100%.
Dude, let's stop down for a second and explain the legal definition of collusion and why that could be a bad thing for NFL players and their agents who are looking to negotiate contracts fairly.
Sure. Collusion is it's if you look into Webster's dictionary, what we use is like Black's legal dictionary, and they're very similar in terms, right? It's whether or not there was active participation amongst more than two or more individuals that had an inverse effect on either the market or if it looks like it's inducing fraud, right? Now here, when you look at it through a legal analysis, you have to have the elements. The elements being two or more individuals, active participation, and you have to have either the fraud or kind of that restraint on the market, right?
Yes. Yeah.
We have a lot of that. I mean, we have proof that this was more than two individuals, right? 32 teams is more than two individuals.
That's right.
We have the adverse effect on the market. Again, proof was there was absolutely no other NFL player, NFL veteran getting a fully guaranteed contract. The issue was the element of active participation.
Yeah.
It can be argued that, well, the simple fact that they're not doing it shows that they're actively participating, but you have to take it one step further, and it has to be that encouragement or that engagement by the management council that made the active participation. That's what the NFLPA's case looked at. And I think there were some other ways possibly around it. Maybe they could have said, hey, look, we understand that Lamar's got this 3-year contract. That's not what we're saying. We're not saying a 3-year fully guaranteed contract. We're saying the market. The market dictates that these quarterbacks, these franchise quarterbacks, are getting 5-year contracts. And you can go back further than Deshaun Watson to show that they're getting 5-year contracts. Not only that, look at what was going to happen moving forward. All of them just about got 5-year contracts. So the fully guaranteed, the collusion wasn't just on the 3-year market. It was on what the market actually is and dictates. And I don't think the NFLPA really went into that. I don't think that was their argument. And maybe it could have been different. Maybe it could have been successful that way. But they didn't. And you have to rely on the grievance or the case filing, the complaint that you make at the time that you make it. It's hard to amend it once it's already actively going.
Jesse, finally, how does this case relate to the Bengals recently using contract language that would void a portion of the guaranteed money due to their first-round pick, Shemar Stewart? Are we starting to see teams now going after some of the fully guaranteed money that's already been collectively bargained to go to their first-round picks?
Yeah, it's yes and no. So yes, in the sense of the Bengals have not done this with first-round picks, and I'm saying first-round picks solely in a vacuum. They've had this language in veteran contracts. Almost every team has voiding language in veteran contracts where they want to get away from, guarantees, whether that's, I can't say fully guaranteed because no one's doing fully guarantees except first-round picks. And it is. They're trying to find a way to possibly get out from paying the full guarantees. And that's where I think a lot of the misconception amongst fans is it's not that they're trying to say, hey, we're not going to pay you this money if a triggering mechanism happens. It's, hey, we could not pay you this money if a triggering mechanism happens. But why? That's kind of the question with the first rounders is why are they wanting to do this now? Because that's not what was collectively bargained for in 2011. And good on Shemar's agent for catching it. I could go on for a long time about how many first round rookies have this language slid into their contracts. And I don't think an agent caught it. And then once it slid in, now we've got precedent. Now it's set. Now the rookies that follow after them have to have it in. I mean, that's the business side of things. That's the law. That's how you negotiate in the law, whether that's criminal law, whether that's personal injury law, whether that's business and you're doing business law and business transactions. Precedent dictates just about everything. It takes the wind out of your sails if someone's able to slide it in. And you've seen it with contracts with Trent Richardson. You've seen it with contracts with Myles Garrett. You've seen it with contracts with Roquan Smith. I mean, these are big name rookies when they came in, and the teams were able to get that voiding mechanism in their contracts. And now the Bengals are trying to do it. And they got called out on it. Are they wrong for trying to put it in? I argue yes. A lot of people will argue against that and say, well, it's good business. If you own a business and you want to make sure that your employees are abiding by your policies and what you want, then it's no harm, no foul putting it in. However, if a employee calls you out on it and says, no, I don't want it, or no, it's not something that I'm willing to do, well, then you have to really kind of think about if it's a hill you're willing to die on. And in this situation, I don't think it's a hill that they should die on, because they were, I don't want to say quick to take it out on Myles Murphy and Maris Mims, but they did take it out. Whether that's through concession or not, and what I mean by that was Mims and was Murphy.
Myles Murphy,
were they willing to say, hey, pay us our signing bonus later, we'll take that out? I mean, those are the concessions. That's the give and take that happen in these negotiations. You have to be able to give some and take some. Both, the team and the player has to look at that. And I think Shemar's in the right now with this. It'll be interesting. I mean, training camp's right around the corner. Bengals have a lot of contracts. I don't want to call them issues, but they got to take care of Trey and they got to take care of Shemar, and they got to figure it out. What they want to do, because who's knocking on the door right now, $40+ million, is TJ Watt, and that's only going to increase Hendrickson. And Shemar's dug his toes in the sand and said, take it out.
That's right.
Or find some concessions.
You earlier said the Arizona Cardinals had certain language put in Kyler Murray's contract. And then later, that language was kind of embarrassing, I think, for both the player and the organization. It seemed like it was, okay, you're going to pay him all this money, but then you wanted to include language that if he didn't study more, they were going to track how much time he was putting in. And then that way he would violate maybe some of the clauses allowing the team to take some money back. And that was with a vested veteran player. But now we see a team putting language in. Yeah, it could be conduct detrimental, but still there's language that would void some of the guaranteed money. How much of this is becoming more of a trend, or are we just to look at this as a one-off? Is it just the Bengals and Shemar Stewart, or is this maybe a bigger growing trend between NFL teams and their expected first-round picks?
It's not a one-off, like I said, because this is something that teams have been trying to get in. CBA for first-round picks was negotiated in 2011, and Trent Richardson's contract had a voiding mechanism in it in 2012. So these owners have been trying to, I don't want to say outsmart the NFLPA and these agents, but they're definitely since the inception of this agreement been trying to find ways to claw back some of those the fully guarantees that are there. And it's not anything new. I mean, teams, especially the Bengals, look back. I can't remember what year it was. I may be off 97, 98 with was it the Carl Pickens clause, where if you said anything to the media negative about the team, well, we could void back some of that money, some of those guarantees. It's been that way since the late 90s. And before that, I know I can't remember off the top of my head exactly who, but as soon as the Roselli rule went into effect and free agency was this frenzy, and you had to outbid everybody, and teams started saying, hey, we'll guarantee you this, we'll guarantee you that. The owners have been trying to slide voiding mechanisms. So it's not new. This isn't new. The problem is I think players are now sitting here saying, whoa, first round picks especially, this isn't what was the bargain for exchange. This isn't why we dialed back the rookie pay scale from, think of Sam Bradford. Sam Bradford still today, his contract is more money as a first overall pick than Cam Ward's first overall pick contract.
Then Joe Burrow.
Right?
Yeah.
15 years later, right?
That's right.
Was 10 years later. So it's nothing new. Like we negotiated this as part of the NFLPA and the NFL with the collective bargaining agreement to make these contracts fully guaranteed. Fully guaranteed means 100%. It doesn't mean let's find a way to bring it back down to 75 or 80.
Yeah.
Like this, and it's, I don't want to say that it's not fair because it's contracts. Just catch it. If you read the contract and you see the language in there, do exactly what Myles Murphy did, do exactly what Amaris Mims did, and do exactly what Shemar Stewart's doing, and say no, take it out. I think the bigger thing here and what gets fans all riled up is because Shemar's not practicing.
Yeah, that is one that's very important. We still have to wait and see if he'll sign his contract before the start of training camp. We still have less than a month away before the start of Cincinnati Bengals training camp, and it's not sure if the Bengals will have their two starting defensive ends. Of course, the veteran Trey Hendrickson and their rookie first-round pick, 17th overall from Texas A&M, Shemar Stewart. Jesse Taylor, sports business attorney, and you also teach sports business law at Northern Kentucky University. We want to thank you for taking the time to join us on Bleav in Bengals podcast. Thank you, everyone, for joining us as well. We'll see you next week, everyone.
Thanks.